Shabbat Shalom, everyone. So over these last 3 weeks, I have shared with you what are going to be 3 different middot, 3 different soul traits or spiritual attributes that help us as Jews to live in the world around us on a very fundamental layer, very fundamental level. We think so often about Judaism teaching us all of the ritual matters within our lives, we forget the power of the spirituality behind our tradition as well. And so, just to recall where we were 2 weeks ago, we spoke about the midah of bitachon, the midah of trust. Last week, we exercised patience in speaking about the midah of patience, since I didn't do it during the Saturday services, but it was sent out on Monday. And by the way, for those people who would like to see or hear a video of these sermons, you're welcome to go to our website, and in the Religious Life tab, there is a section called Rabbi Sermons. These sermons are up there, as well as Rabbi Ern's and my other sermons from High Holy Days and other things this year, so you're welcome to go and you're welcome to look at those sermons if you missed one of them. Today, we are going to look at the midah of zrizut. Zrizut. There's a couple of different ways to translate that. For now, I'm going to translate it as enthusiasm. And if we think about it, there's sort of a flow and a logic to the ones that I chose and the way in which I chose them. First, we have to start with bitachon, with trust, trusting ourselves, trusting God, trusting the people around us. Then we need to learn patience, because we can't always do everything we want to do in the way we want to do it, exactly at the time we want to do it. But when it comes time to do something, we are supposed to do it with zrizut, with enthusiasm. We're not just supposed to half-heartedly do whatever it is that we are going to do. So, as I've done in the past, we're going to divide this into 2 sections. First, what does our tradition say about it? And secondly, how do we cultivate this particular midah? So Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, the Ramchal, who actually dedicates 4 chapters in Mesilat Yesharim to this particular midah, to zrizut, describes it as follows. Zrizut is the immediate engaging in mitzvot and their completion. So not just engaging it, but the immediate. It's a time factor. We don't delay. We don't let them sit. We don't wait for them. As the sages say, he writes, the zealous are early in the performing of mitzvot. And we have this idea all over our tradition of being zariz la mitzvah, of being quick to perform a mitzvah. We've got, for example, all day on the 8th day to circumcise a boy. All it says is the 8th day. But our tradition says we should be zariz la mitzvah. We shouldn't put it off to the end of the day. We should do it in the morning. It should be one of the first things that we do. Why wait? Why put it off? Let's move with enthusiasm towards the performance of this particular mitzvah. And so that's the first layer of understanding zrizut, is just time. Don't let things sit. Don't let things wait. If we have the ability to do something, get up, let's do it. In the 13th century, Rav Yonah of Gerondi wrote that this particular midah was actually the fundamental midah to all of them, really to everything. And he wrote, if a person will not rouse himself, of what benefit are all of the other middot? At some point in time, we can talk about all these other things that we want to do, but if we don't have the ability to get ourselves up to actually act on those things, nothing is going to happen. It's all going to just stay in our mind. And the classic text, Orchot HaChaim, agrees with this. He says, Zrizut is the foundation of all traits. It's the ornament to all of them, and it perfects them. And I like that because he builds not only on the fact that we need it in order to go out and to do things, but he says it perfects them. Let's think about that for a moment. The enthusiasm that we have for our mitzvot takes the mitzvot, he's arguing, to another layer, to another level. Yes, it is a good thing to give tzedakah. But when we give tzedakah with zrizut, when we give it with enthusiasm, it elevates that to a whole other level. As we go through and as we look at our biblical texts, we look for a paradigm of zrizut. It's not hard to find. Abraham, is the paradigm that our rabbis turn to for this particular midah. And in the text that we actually read on the High Holy Days, it says, Vayashkem Avraham baboker. Abraham woke up early in the morning, and he saddled his donkey, and he took his two servants and his son Isaac, and he split the wood for the burnt offering, and he set out to the place which God had told him. Here it was, Avraham was about to perform a task, an action that he didn't want to do. He was going to sacrifice his son, and it says, Vayashkem Avraham baboker. He got up early in the morning to do it. He didn't put it off. He didn't wait. He saw this as a divine obligation, and that's a whole other conversation, which we've had many times on Yom Kippur, of what does this mean and why did God ask him? But let's leave that aside for a moment. This was a mitzvah. This was an obligation that he had to do, so he got up early to go and do it. We also see Avraham in his desire to perform the mitzvah of hachnasat orchim, of welcoming in guests. He would sit at the tent, even in the heat of the day, wait for people to go so he could run out there and bring them in. That is the example that we have of zrizut. And actually, one of my favorite biblical examples we read today. Barbara, actually, it was the first verse that you read, and it brings a whole other layer, and actually a different translation. We translate zrizut as enthusiasm, but sometimes we translate it as alacrity, right? The ability to get up and to move quickly, not just enthusiastically. And Barbara read today Exodus 14:15. The Lord said to Moses, "Why do you cry out to me? Tell the Israelites to go forward." At some point in time, right, they were worried, they were afraid, and God says to Moses, "What are they fetching for? Go, act." Right? That's the result. Don't sit here, don't think, don't worry, don't fret. Go. Do something. To me, these are all of the aspects that we have from our biblical stories and from the rabbinic stories of zrizut. But as we start to learn about zrizut, we see it's not so easy. It's not so easy. And Greg Marcus puts this in an interesting way in his book. He says, we all have free will, but it's not always accessible. We all have the ability to make these choices, but we don't. We don't always make them with ease. There are times that we know we should be doing something, but we just can't get ourselves to do it. There seems to be a block in our ability to exercise this midah of zrizut. Maybe it's putting dishes in the dishwasher. Maybe it's that visit to the dentist. Maybe even for some, it's just getting out of bed in the morning, right? We all have that free will, but we just can't seem to access it. And so we have to ask ourselves the questions, what are the blockers? What are the things that prevent zrizut, that prevent our fulfillment of this particular midah? Rabbi Luzzatto says the bad that comes from laziness does not come about in one fell swoop. He sees laziness as the main blocker. And he says that it comes slowly and without notice. It comes in a sequence of one bad deed after another until you find yourself sunk in evil. For Luzzatto, for Ramchal, that's the major blocker, is our proclivity to be lazy. as human beings. And he says in the beginning it's not such a bad thing, but as it builds and as it builds, we sort of solidify ourselves in that position of laziness, and it brings us farther and farther away from being able to perform the things that we are supposed to do the things that we are supposed to do. The altar of, hold on, I got to make sure I've got this right. Where is it? Yes. The altar of Novorodok says that the major blocker for Zrizut are the dreaded if-onlys. If-onlys. If only I had more time, then I would learn something new. If only I had more money, I would give more tzedakah. This rationalization that we have of if only, that, he says, is the biggest blocker of our ability to act with Zrizut. And finally, Luzzatto says the last blocker in all of this is anxiety and worry. He says that worry depletes our spiritual energy, and there's no end to it. One time you might be nervous about the cold or the heat, he writes. Then another time you might be worried about accidents, and another time you might be worried about illness, and another time you might be worried about the wind or the rain, and so on and so on. There's no end to it. So the blockers of Zrizut, laziness, if-onlys, and worry, anxiety, prevent us from being able to live this midah fully, to experience this midah fully. So how do we cultivate it? How do we overcome those blockers? For Luzzatto, the overcoming factor of this is gratitude. He says that when we awaken ourselves to the very many good things that are in our lives, to the things that God does for us, to the miracles that are around us, in every moment, when we have gratitude for that, it makes us overcome those blockers. It makes us say, wait, I want to go out, I want to see more, I want to do more, I want to give thanks for more in my life. And so we're able to overcome those blockers that are there. Over these last few weeks, I've looked at Greg Marcus's examples of how to live these middot. And for each one, he usually gives a mantra. If you read his book, Spiritual Actions, he gives a mantra to help us focus. He actually gave a few of them for the midah of Zrizut. But the one I like the best, and the one that I want to share with you as a mantra, is based on the Talmudic dictum, run to pursue a mitzvah. And his mantra is, run to do good. That is his mantra for the midah of Zrizut. Run to do good. These mitzvot, these actions that we want to do in the world, we want to go out, we want to do good, don't wait, run to do them. And I like it because it gives us both the need to act in the world and also the necessity for the alacrity and the urgency in our actions. Run to do good. And I'll leave you with one final thought in terms of how we cultivate this. In a nice piece by Rabbi Alexandria Shuval Weiner about Zrizut, she had a suggestion for how we should practice and how we can practice this midah. She writes, from the moment you awake in the morning, intentionally meet the day with enthusiasm. Intentionally meet the day with enthusiasm. Set your intention for the day. Find the spark that will ignite passion and motivation for you and act on it, recognizing the fact that sometimes it's different for different people. What motivates you and what motivates me is going to be different. What motivates you and what motivates your children or your significant other is going to be different. Each of us has to find that spark, that thing that motivates us, and set our intention for that day. Be actively attuned to discover the sacred moments and miracles all around us. Rejoice in them. Show that gratitude that Luzzatto was talking about. Seize opportunities to speak out on behalf of truth and righteousness and justice, those things that motivate us as Jews to act. Seize those opportunities. And finally, find ways to take note of the successful completion of your particular tasks, even the tiniest, and celebrate them. Recognize the tasks that we have. Recognize that sometimes just getting a few little things done, that's good. Let's celebrate that. Some days we can change the world. Some days we can hardly change the channel on the TV. But either way, let's celebrate our accomplishments, big or small. My friends, may we wake up tomorrow morning with our hearts filled with passion to act in the world. May the divine spark that is in each of us allow us to witness the miracles that surround us and inspire us to be part of them. May we trust in God. May patience with ourselves lead us to the zrizut, the enthusiasm, to shape our world into all that it can be. Shabbat Shalom.